In the last video, we talked about how to solve one-step equations, and that's part of Learning Target 1.1. Today, we're going to finish that up and talk about a couple two-step equations, and then we're also going to talk about 1.3 and how to justify each step. Now, as I go through this, you might want to pause some of the screen so you can write down the properties. Definitely take your time with this. If you have any questions throughout the video, raise your hand, and I can help you out. Okay, so we're going to solve two-step equations. It's exactly what it says. You have two steps to solve it. What I typically tell students is to solve using inverse operations by starting with the operation that is furthest from the variable. So what I mean by that is if you notice your variables right here, the 5 is the closest to that. So I'm going to start by canceling that minus 2. So the opposite of minus 2 is plus 2. So we're going to do that just like we did yesterday. And when I add 2 to both sides, those cancel. So I'm left with 5t on the left equals negative 30 on the right. Then I'm left with a one-step equation. So 5 times t means I need to divide by 5 on both sides to get t equals negative 6. Okay. Now to check this, what you could do is plug this in and do negative 6 times 5, which is negative 30, minus 2, which is negative 32. So it works. We're in good shape. Okay, so let's do another one that's very similar. Okay, we are going to start with the operation that is furthest from the end. So the n and the 7 are right next to each other. They're in a fraction this time. So we're going to start again with this 2, and we're going to do minus 2 on both sides. Okay, so when we subtract 2 on both sides, we're left with n divided by 7 equals 0. Okay. The opposite of dividing by 7 is multiplying by 7. Okay, I don't usually use the x there, but I'm going to do that. Okay, so if I multiply by 7 on both sides, the left side cancels, so leave me with n, and then 0 times 7 is 0. So if we wanted to check this, we could plug it in, do 0 divided by 7, which is 0, plus 2 gives me 2. Okay, so not much more complicated than solving one-step equations. We just add an extra step there, so you're going to have to either add or subtract, and then typically, add or subtract and then multiply or divide. Okay, it gets a little bit more complicated when we look at something like C. In this, we have fractions, and most of my students will tell me that they started hating math when they had to work on fractions. Well, to make this easy, let's just get rid of them. Okay, so what does 5 and 13, what do 5 and 13 both go into? And I said that way wrong. What do 5 and 3 both go into? And they both go into 15. So I'm going to multiply everything in this equation by 15. This is what it looks like. So 15 times 1 over 5n minus 15 times 1 over 3 equals 15 times 8 over 3. Okay, whenever I have fractions, I like to simplify, and I showed that in my last video. So if I can simplify this, 5 goes into 15 3 times. So it's pretty easy now. 3 times 1n is 3n. In the second part, 3 goes into 15 5 times. So 5 times 1 is 5. And then the last one, 3 goes into 15 5 times again, but 5 times 8 this time is 40. Okay? Now, by multiplying everything by the common denominator, I was able to eliminate the fractions. This is a similar equation to the 2 we just solved. So we're going to go ahead and add 5 to both sides. So we get 3n equals 45. And then divide by 3 on both sides to get n equals 15. Okay, if you wanted to, you could plug an n in, 15 in for n and enter all of that in your calculator and see if you get 8/3 for an answer. Last one, we have some decimals here. Notice my variable is on the right side this time. It doesn't change anything. The 1.2 and the y are right next to each other, so I don't want to do anything with those yet. We're going to start by adding 5.7 to both sides. So on the right side they cancel. On the left side I get 7.2. So 7.2 equals 1.2y. So 1.2 times y, I need to divide by 1.2 on both sides to get 0.6. Sorry, not 0.6, 6. Okay, so 6 equals y. We can check this by plugging it back in. Do 1.2 times 6 minus 5.7, and you should get 1.5. Okay, so that's pretty much it for two-step equations. There are 4 problems here for you to try. I want you to try these, and then if you have any questions, make sure you ask. Once you finish them, have them checked. Okay, for B and D, you're going to multiply by common denominator. So this one I'm going to multiply by 10 on everything. This one I'm going to multiply by 12. Okay, hopefully that's enough to get you started. Please speak up if you have a question. Let us know and we can help you out. Okay. 1.3 talks about justifying your steps. Okay, we've talked about some of these things before, but there are some properties or some steps that you're going to take. The first one is distributive property. That means you're going to distribute the number through the parentheses to get rid of the parentheses. Okay, combining like terms means combining like terms on the same side of an equation. Okay, not when you're looking at both sides. And then simplify or reduce is just simplifying or reducing a fraction for the final solution. Okay, the four that you might not know are exactly what we've been doing when we're solving equations. So when I add two numbers, add the same number to both sides of the equation to solve, that's addition property of equality. Okay, if I subtract the same number on both sides, that is subtraction property of equality. If I multiply by the same number on both sides, that is the multiplication property of equality. And if I divide by the same number on both sides, that is the division property of equality. Okay, now I went through those pretty quickly. So if you need to, hit pause so that you can write these down. Okay, that'll help you out. Okay, let's do two problems where we're going to go ahead and justify our steps. Okay, so the first one you'll notice here is just a one-step equation. We have negative 13 equals y divided by 3. Now, to cancel division, remember, we are going to multiply by that number on both sides. So if I multiply by 13 on both sides, I get negative 39 equals y. Okay, if I have to justify my steps, like it says in the directions, my reasoning here is the multiplication property of equality. Okay, I multiply by the same number on both sides, so that is my justification. That's all I have to do. So I have my solution here, and I have my justification to the right. Okay, not too bad. Still solving the same way. Just tell us what you're doing on each side. Okay. For B, we need to get rid of those fractions, and we've had several of those in here. So to get rid of the fraction, you need to decide what goes into what can I divide by 4, 2, and 8. And I can actually divide all of those by 8. Okay, this is technically also the multiplication property of equality because we are multiplying everything by that 8. So I'm going to do 8 times 3/4 u plus 8 times 1/2 equals 8 times 7/8. Okay, so notice that 4 goes into 8 twice. So if we kind of cross that off and make that a 2, 2 times 3 is 6u. 2 goes into 8 4 times, so 4 times 1 is 4. And then 8 goes into 8 one time. Okay, so those cancel each other out and then equals 7. Okay, so our step there is simplifying or reducing. Okay, from here I have a two-step equation. So I'm going to go ahead, I can draw my line in if that helps. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So I get 6u equals 3. So that would be the subtraction property of equality. Then I have a 6 in front of my u, so 6 times u. To cancel 6, I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides. So that would be the division property of equality. Okay, now I want you to be really careful here because my answer is not going to be 2. A lot of students will tell me that 3 divided by 6 is 2. It's actually going to be 1/2 because the bigger number was on top. So then I just reduced my fraction or simplified, however you want to write that. Okay, so u equals 1/2 is my final answer. So here are my justification steps. I'm just using those properties that we had on the previous 2 pages. Other than that, I'm just solving like we did before. Okay, there are 2 more problems for you to try. A hint for B. Notice I tell you to do the one that's furthest away. You want to leave this where it's at. Okay, don't do anything with that x plus 5 until you multiply by 9 on both sides so that those cancel. Okay, just a hint to help you out. Go ahead and try these guided practice problems. Once you've finished, raise your hand, have all of them checked, and if you are struggling, we can help you out. If not, we will give you your homework so you can get started on that. Just to recap, we finished 1.1. We did solving 2-step equations. So your homework today is going to be on 2-step equations, and then the next video will be solving equations with variables on one side. Have a great day.